I come to you with a bit of forbidden knowledge because, well, the name of something from World of Warcraft's next expansion has actually leaked from Blizzard's nice locked vault, and yes, this is another example of Blizzard making a little bit of a data whoopsie, and that leading to us knowing at least something about the next expansion. And that means today it's time for a deep dive. You're going to learn a hell of a lot about where World of Warcraft is going next and the sorts of things that it will entail. To be honest with you, some of it, yeah, could actually be pretty damn cool. But first, there is something for you to play today. Squarespace.com/Bellular Gaming, where they've actually got two amazing new features that come together perfectly, right? One of them is called Blueprint, and it lets you make a custom template, right? So rather than picking a template of a whole bunch of lists, you instead are guided through all the core sections and functionalities that you'd want for your site, right? You select what you want there, and then you can easily add more pages to your site. And then where the magic, where it starts to come together, is you selecting your color palette from fantastic presets. You've got all the color theory worked out, and then, of course, a perfect font choice. And after that, you just have your template. And then Fluid Engine comes in, because the web can be hard, and often that means you can't lay out something the way you maybe would in Photoshop. Fluid Engine solves that problem. You can see me editing here, right? Once I upgrade the block, I can lay out the elements wherever I want with so much more flexibility than I've seen before. It is a killer feature that, paired with Blueprint, offers an unparalleled site building experience that is just so easy to get started. It all works with their e-commerce, mailing lists, memberships, all their features all built into the platform. And you can start building your site today for free with my link down below, and use code Bellular Gaming for 10% off an annual plan when you're ready to send that site live. Squarespace.com/Bellular Gaming. Algarian Stormrider. Per the database, that is the name of our next expansion's Heroic Edition mount. Algarian does sound new, but it's actually not. In the revamped Uldaman, this report was found, detailing the fate of an Earthen expedition sent to investigate an anomaly. Earthens sent into a fissure who developed their own society in a location we're not currently aware of, and they call it Khaz Algar. What's going on? Well, first up, this fissure was classified as anomalous in the source text. And second, the flavor text of the item reads, "This probably should be designated as classified." And as we'll learn later, there's a very specific category of information that Odin would want to be classified. Okay, another wrinkle to that is Uldaz. Uldaz is a Titan facility that was mentioned by the Maiden of Vitality during BFA, and that was in the very same line that she revealed Uldoris to us. Uldoris is the name of the Titan facility in the Dragon Isles, also known as Tyrhold. And I suppose you could think, Khaz ends with a Z, Uldaz ends with a Z, it's probably enough for Blizzard to say they're tied together. Now, even more in-game evidence has been found, though, such as a recent PTR build adding Stormrider Stormhammers to the game that are encrypted. Many other dwarf-related items as well, seemingly, I would say, for the trading post, have also been found. And of course, all this Stormrider stuff brings one image to mind. It is this image. Right? One of the original World of Warcraft loading screens, dwarf on a griffin, big hammer, all very cool, and rather curiously, Blizzard recently added dynamic flying animations for griffins, and that does mean that at the very least, if all of this is fake, well, your Wildhammer clan dwarf fantasies may yet come true for your own character. Now, before I dive into all of this, I think we need to get a little bit of context and understand some other things. Now, before I dive fully into all this, there's a little bit of out-of-game context that will be useful. Towley heavily suggests underground elements in our next expansion. This is what he says. He says, everyone keeps talking about the South Seas expansion. I keep telling y'all are thinking too much above the seas. And he goes on. Now, the clip was deleted, which is a little bit suspicious. And while he does sometimes like to play with people dispensing little drops and hints of information, it is the case that he does have many friends at Blizzard. He's hung out with many of these people in person. And it's also true that Khaz Algar is within a fissure. So yeah, underground. There's also been some similar talk relating to maybe what will collapse in Silithus because of the sword that was stuck into the planet. Yeah, lots of things, but at the very least, Khaz Algar in a fissure, somebody in the know talking about underground elements in a deleted clip. Okay, what's going on? There's a hell of a lot of connections. I'm just going to dive into them. Number 1, Chris Metzen is returning. Number 2, Avalorn was mentioned in the same set of documents that contained what we know of Khaz Algar. And I know at least a few people have been watching our Avalorn video, I think, in light of this information. Now, Khaz Algar as a thing, I think, is rock solid, given we know about the Algarian Stormrider. And I think that means that other information found within the same set of texts from Uldaman, well, it's now gained that sort of great, importance, right? Because one of the things is, in a very tangible sense, true. So to me, that raises the importance of Avalorn. And it also highlights Odin, because Odin, of course, is the main speaker in many of those texts. And Odin is a character who's cropped up from time to time recently, but he's not been tremendously active in the story. And remember I said I would mention Odin and trying to keep things hush-hush? Well, the Curse of Flesh. So, in the report, obviously, the Curse of Flesh is talked about. Now, of course, we only call it the Curse of Flesh because we're coming from that perspective as, in many cases anyway, like at least ex-Titan beings or sort of aligned broadly with the forces of order. Now, the Curse of Flesh would be called the Gift of Flesh, and in many ways you can see why it is a bit of a gift. It seems to give us all these cool things like free will, not being a robot, and also death, which kind of gets us the Shadowlands, but I won't talk about that point because I don't want to make everybody sad. Now, what basically happened is these Earthen went into the fissure, and then seemingly via the Curse of Flesh, they came out kind of being like dwarves with the Dwarven Society. So look, point is, there's maybe more to the Curse of Flesh than we know. There was perhaps more going on in that fissure than we have been, we haven't really been led to believe anything, right? This is something that the flavor text says should, be classified. And in those texts, the edicts of the Prime Designate, we basically learn how Odin says, okay, all those advancements of the Black Empire, yeah, we're going to lie about those. They didn't happen. It was only the bad stuff, which of course completely informs the perspective that most have had in the game, right? So, I think that's kind of relevant. Now, all this talk of fissures, of course, has got me thinking about the Earth. Maybe about elements. And when you know it, Iridikron is the primal Earth dragon, potentially a dragon infused with, Earth by Tyr himself, because what was Tyr doing in the Dragon Isles in a capacity of a dude who worked for Odin? Oh, he was, infusing different dragons with elements. Tyr is a character that is featured heavily in Dragonflight, with the restoration of his body very likely happening in 10.2. And of course, we've got the whole, Order of Tyr's Hand quest that recently dropped in the game. Now, Tyr, while he did follow the Titan's orders, also took many risks. He lived and eventually died very honorably, most would say. And really, when push came to shove, he went to bat for the dragon aspects that over time he grew to become very fond of. And in fact, the uplifting of these dragons into the dragon aspects was something that pissed Odin off so much that Odin essentially rage quit. He removed his area of Ulduar from Ulduar. He flew it up into the sky, and then he became set on doing the job of the dragons himself by creating the Valajar, who rode enslaved storm dragons, because he really doesn't like dragons. Of course, joke was on him. He really did a lot of awful things to Helya, and Helya locked him up there, meaning that, he wasn't really able to do jack shit. And I bring this up because Odin, obviously, since Legion, is a character who, is in the game and is relevant, right? Now, by the time of his demise, given how Odin hated the dragons and rage quitting everyone, I don't actually think Tyr would have liked Odin that much. I think they're characters who are now in natural opposition. And I think if Blizzard wants to tell a good story, they don't have to go and talk about, the force of order. No, they have to have the cool guy that we like, Tyr, getting a big cool fight with a person that maybe we don't like as much, Odin. And, that then gets to be the story, and they can have a story instead of just talking about parts of a chart. Right, it'll be a lot better. Now, speaking of elements, you've also got Farak's element Fire, and how it has a major dwarven connection. Because the legendary Fire Lord Ragnaros was very foolishly summoned in, too early, too soon some would say, to be at full power, and he was defeated in the Molten Core. 7 years later, we went to the Firelands, and we were kind of doing that at the head of the Earthen Ring, and we defeated him for good. Soon Soon after that, Smolderon rose to prominence and became the new Fire Lord, and free from Ragnaros, the Dark Iron Dwarves kind of reintegrated with dwarf kind. Their leader Moira joined up with the Council of the Three Hammers. I believe now the Ironforge heir is a dark hammer. So quite a lot of things going on there. Thing is, though, not all the Dark Iron Dwarves liked this whole peace and friendship thing, and so, as part of that, the Cult of Ragnaros was formed. What do the Cult of Ragnaros want? Yeah, bit of a hint, it's Ragnaros. So, when Sargeras' Legion invaded, in the Legion expansion, Smolderon allied with the Earthen Ring, because a great threat brought everybody together, albeit for a short time. Smolderon soon went missing, and it's kind of left as a bit of a dangling plot thread from the Dark Iron Dwarf Heritage Armor quest. But of course, the elemental plane of fire was really not impacting anybody's life. The world spun round, and we kind of had the whole Battle for Azeroth thing to go and do. Now, patch 10.2 marks Smolderon's return, where now he, along with a bunch of new Druids of the Flame, are siding with Farak. Elemental Lords disliking Titans? That is not a new thing. Elemental Lords being friendly with, the sort of primal dragon group, that I think actually does make a lot of sense. But the thing is, Smolderon is almost certainly killed in patch 10.2. That would now mean that the Cult of Ragnaros will have the perfect opportunity to, bring back their boy Ragnaros somehow. And of course, the Cult of Ragnaros are Dark Iron Dwarves. Dwarves, Khaz Algar. Then, of course, there's a whole selection of dwarf assets that have made it into the game but haven't been used. Why do we need a new Bronzebeard-looking siege engine? Why would Blizzard work on those assets? Yes, it all is very suspicious. So, what do we got, right? We've got Titan Keepers likely in conflict upon Tyr's return. We've got maybe Ragnaros coming back. We've got Azeroth in peril as Iridikron and Xal'atath either make their move in the new expansion or as a direct result of whatever they do at the end of this expansion. We've also got Chris Metzen being back. Not only does he play Thrall, the world shaman, he's also a father of Warcraft setting and foundational stories, who is back full-time as executive creative director on the game. I mean, it wouldn't be insane to think, Cataclysm, but good. But that's actually not all. I originally was going to call the next part of this video Chekhov's Gun. Now I have to call it Chekhov's Guns. Okay, Chekhov's gun. It's a very simple, tenet of screenwriting. It's basically, right, look, if in, say, Act 1, you're going to have a character put a gun on the mantelpiece or something like that, the audience will expect that gun to be fired or something to happen with it, right? The point being, why would you put this information in if you're not going to use it? This kind of thing, the foreshadowing, that's a pretty important part of telling a cohesive narrative. That flows together, that's layered, that has tension, that is escalating. World of Warcraft has many of these Chekhov's guns, and I've already touched on many of the most relevant ones, right? Khaz Algar, the story of its earthen turned into a dwarven population, Iridikron, Xal'atath, Odin, Tyr, Avalorn. Well, I've actually got a few more Chekhov's guns for you. Azeroth has another landmass. It's, really there. Basically, Kalimdor, remember, before Kalimdor was exploded into multiple smaller landmasses, Kalimdor was not Azeroth's only continent. This is something that was confirmed by Neltharian's research. We found that in the Forbidden Reach, and it's just another one of those things that Odin scrubbed from history, that there is another continent. Obviously, what happens when you sail east of east, west of west on the Azeroth map? The answer is something kills you and you don't come back. Unless you're a certain night elf, who I'm going to talk about in a bit. Also, we have the sword in Silithus, and I did like Soul's comment to one of Tauli's tweets, saying, that sword, when it went down, would it not kind of clap some structures, Could it do anything relating to Cthulhu? I think it's an interesting theory. Of course, we've got N'Zoth. N'Zoth almost certainly had a plan for after his apparent demise. And this is something heavily suggested because we confirm to N'Zoth what timeline would come to pass by meeting him when we traveled back in time to the Black Empire, meaning that as of his defeat in battle for Azeroth, right, whenever we killed him in BFA, N'Zoth had information that we did not. That's probably very relevant. We then have the Night Squall, this Night Elf pirate warlord dude who has returned from beyond the Forbidden Sea, right? Which is a pretty major thing. Likely then, he's returned from that unknown continent, maybe for Avalorn, maybe they're the same thing, who knows. But he's now forming a grand host from across the world. Blizzard President Mike Ybarra said it's not going to be a pirate expansion. He said no pirates. Well, that doesn't mean that the Night Squall can't or won't arrive in a patch. There's other things too, like there's a new Claxi Queen. What's she doing? The Claxi obviously serve the old gods. Then, Cthulhu and Yogg-Saron's true bodies were never destroyed. Old god bodies are very big. Yashar's body was destroyed by Aman'Thul. Of course, that will have just freed Yashar's essence to go back to its home plane. And the same goes for N'Zoth, right? Because yes, the Void dudes go back to the Void plane when they die. I suppose a bit like how demons, they go back to the Twisting Nether when they die. And the only way to truly kill a demon is by killing it within the Twisting Nether. So you could actually say that by killing N'Zoth, who was sort of stuck in his big fleshy prison in Azeroth, we actually kind of broke him out of prison, and he clearly had a plan for that. Anyway, in essence, here they were kind of set free from their Titan bonds when destroyed, and the main bodies of Yogg-Saron and Cthulhu are sort of still there on Azeroth. And while I'm on the topic of Void, what else spoke to Neltharion and Sarkarath? Right? Who are the other voices? Because when we defeated N'Zoth, Illyria remarked that the whispers hadn't stopped. That no, what happened is new whispers, new voices joined the chorus. So I'm sure she's going absolutely bananas. So this is, I think as you can see, a humongous collection of very easy to hit plot elements. And almost all of these are things that you could see be tied to content. Maybe that sword has pierced the prison of Cthulhu, allowing for him to rise again. Maybe Xal'atath and Iridikron start the timer and the Titans return, right? Some epic showdown between the roided up chads that are Odin and Tyr, right? Maybe the two of them fighting, the Tyr, the Tyr's hand being on our side. Maybe Thrall sort of coming back in a major way, rekindling the shamanism. Maybe some elemental chaos. But okay, let's try to set some expectations. Okay, so now that you know all of that lore, I do have one example. So Mists of Pandaria's Collector's Edition mount was called the Imperial Quillen. Now yes, that matched the Mogu, and yes, the Mogu played a really big role in Mists of Pandaria. But could you have predicted the Siege of Orgrimmar if the name Imperial Quillen was data mined at the end of Cataclysm? The answer is almost certainly not. Now, that means that you should not consider the next expansion a known quantity based on the information in this video. What I'm merely doing here is collecting the various toys strewn around the floor and putting them back in Metzen's box, so that we can say, look at all the toys in the box, where could this go? And I suppose that's where I need to bring things to the end of this video. It all comes back to Iridikron's words. He says that he doesn't want to just control Azeroth or anything like that. No, she's but a means to an end for him. Iridikron, he lives for the war. He, as with Ferak, is far beyond the point of actually caring about any of the original goals of their cause, right? He doesn't give a shit about that. And that realization is what just turned Veranoth to our side, because she realized, hang on a second, I'm doing it, doing all this, all these mean things, for all of these reasons that I have. He doesn't seem to have them. He just seems to have went mad. And that's why Veranoth decided to be our friend. So, Iridikron will want to hold Azeroth's life in his hands so that he can force the hand of his most hated enemy, the Titans, and presumably kill them. Azeroth, whatever she is the greatest of her kind. And for the Titans, turning her into one of them means victory over all the things that they oppose, right? Her power can really mean the end of the Void God threat, destroy all demonkind, maybe enslave light to their will, transform nature of all worlds into a garden. She is the key to absolutely everything that they desire. So as this hastens, we may see the likes of Azeroth awakening, Titans returning, Illidan returning, Sargeras too. Or it could be something a little bit different, and I think this will be pretty major to many of you. So, Warcraft has had other worlds and alien races since the orcs crashed through the Dark Portal and sacked Stormwind. Warcraft 2 saw us control Illyria, Turalyon, and Khadgar as they ventured off into the world of Draenor. Elements like these are classic Warcraft, right? Going through a portal to another planet out in space is core Warcraft. It's been a part of this franchise since long before WoW even came out. However, in those times, it was always very firmly focused on what those things meant to the world that we cared about, the factions we cared about, and, they weren't really glossing over the world that we care about to start spending a whole bunch of time getting into the arcane, gory details of the background lore. That's kind of a messy sentence, but I think you get my point here, right? Blizzard can do these things in a way that doesn't involve like, oh, we're going to go to wherever and then we're going to have a full Voidlands expansion. They can do stuff without that. I mean, I know lots of us want a world revamp, and you could kind of do it sort of like this. So number one, Ian said that a world revamp is likely. Now, I do think that 11.0 is too soon to do a world revamp. Chris Metzen is said to be working on the next adventures of Warcraft, ensuring that those adventures are new ideas that still feel Warcraft. Perhaps 11.0 can go hard on the toys in the box that I've spent today's video telling you about, right? But they can do that without jumping the shark. You can end this without the Titans and Sargeras and the Void Gods and everything just appearing and saying hello. Or I suppose you could deal with all those in the final patch. But point is, you can maybe just leave the Titans' arrival as a big thing in the lore that's looming, right? You can do that. You can do the same. You can have the Titans returning as being like Sargeras was in the classic through Legion era, of sort of Thanos to Marvel, right? If Chris is there to ensure that the future of Warcraft is still Warcraft, I mean, what better way to have a true sequel to Vanilla WoW than, a world revamp that, as Ian said in a recent interview, wouldn't make the same mistakes as Cataclysm. I do think that that's the best possible timeline, and to be honest with you, with all of the assets that have been sneaking into the game, I do think it's something that is going to happen. You can watch this video about that next. Overall, I think that these fairly obvious plot points could actually be the next thing that we will see, and that after that, the revamp will come, and in a way you could almost see that as the next era of WoW launching. Yeah, that's what I think anyway, so let me know what you think. I hope you at least enjoyed learning about all these little lore details and how they may, actually play a role in this next expansion that has been heavily teased by the Algarian Stormrider being data mined. That is it for me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.